I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. Maybe it was the champagne flowing too freely. Or maybe it was the way Kaysen's hand felt loose around mine, like he was holding on to something temporary, something borrowed. The engagement hall sparkled with crystal chandeliers, white roses climbing every column, and 200 guests who believed they were witnessing the beginning of forever. But I knew better. Deep in my chest, where fear lives alongside hope, something whispered that tonight would destroy me. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for the happy couple. The event coordinator's voice boomed through the speakers and everyone erupted into applause. Kaysen stepped forward first, dragging me with him toward the small stage they'd erected near the dance floor. My dress shoes clicked against marble. Each step felt like walking toward an execution. Under the spotlight, Kaysen's face glowed. Handsome, always so handsome, with that sharp jaw and those blue eyes that once made me believe in fairy tales. He picked up the microphone, flashed his practice smile, the one he used during business meetings, and cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming tonight. It means the world to us. He paused, squeezed my hand once, then let go. I stand here as the luckiest man alive. Tonight, I'm engaged to someone who's been incredibly patient with me. Someone really special. The pause between those sentences lasted 3 heartbeats too long. I felt my smile crack at the edges. Special. Not amazing. Not the love of his life. Not irreplaceable. Just special. The word hung in the air like smoke, leaving a bitter taste. Everyone clapped anyway. My parents in the 3rd row beamed with pride. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. If only they could see what I saw. The distance in Kaysen's expression. The way he angled his body slightly away from mine. How his speech sounded rehearsed rather than felt. Congratulations, someone shouted. Kiss. 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 The group chanted from the back. Kaysen turned to me, leaned in, and pressed his lips against mine. It was quick, clinical, like sealing an envelope. When he pulled away, I tasted nothing. No passion. No promise. Just the faint trace of whiskey and regret. The crowd roared. Music started playing. Kaysen immediately descended from the stage, shaking hands with guests, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear. He moved through the room like he was working a networking event, not celebrating our future together. I stood there alone for a moment, watching him go. Then the nausea hit. My chest tightened, breathing became difficult, and the room tilted sideways. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to escape this suffocating performance where I was both the star and the fool. I pushed through clusters of congratulating relatives, dodged questions about wedding dates and honeymoon destinations, and finally reached the hallway leading toward the restrooms. The music faded behind me. Here in this quiet corridor lined with gilded mirrors, I could almost hear myself think. Almost. I reached the men's room door and pushed it open, desperate to splash cold water on my face, to reset whatever was breaking inside me. But the moment I stepped inside, the world ended. There, against the marble sink counter, was Kaysen. On his knees, with my cousin Kyle standing in front of him, hands tangled in Kaysen's hair, both of them locked in something that looked nothing like an accident. Kyle's shirt was unbuttoned, his belt undone, and the expression on his face was pure satisfaction. They didn't notice me immediately. For 3 eternal seconds I watched, paralyzed, disbelieving, dying inside while my brain tried to make sense of what my eyes already understood. Then Kaysen pulled back, saw me, and didn't even have the decency to look guilty. Aiden. My name came out flat, annoyed, like I'd interrupted something important. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened but no sound emerged. Every word I'd ever learned vanished, leaving only a hollow ringing in my ears. Kyle turned, adjusting his clothes with infuriating casualness. He smirked, actually smirked, and walked toward me with the confidence of someone who'd already won. Oh, Aiden. Come on. His voice dripped with condescension. You seriously thought he loved you? That this was real? He gestured between Kaysen and himself. We've been together for 8 months. You were just convenient. A good cover story. 8 months. The words hit like bullets. 8 months while I planned this engagement. Chose flowers. Argued with caterers. Told everyone how lucky I was. 8 months of being the punchline to a joke I didn't know existed. How could you? My voice finally returned, broken and small. How could I? Kyle laughed, cruel and sharp. "Aiden, wake up. You're boring." "Safe. The kind of person someone marries when they want their parents to shut up." He stepped closer, lowered his voice. "But me? I'm what he actually wants." Kaysen still hadn't moved from his position. He just stared at me with dead eyes, waiting for this inconvenience to pass. Something inside me splintered. Not broke, splintered, like glass shattering into 1,000 pieces that would never fit back together. I turned and ran. Back through the corridor, past the event hall where laughter and music still played, where people celebrated a lie. Out the front doors into the cold night air. I didn't stop until I reached the parking lot. Gasping for breath, my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. The world kept spinning. Cars passed on the distant highway. Somewhere, life continued as if mine hadn't just imploded. I stood there alone in my expensive suit, wearing an engagement ring that meant nothing, wondering how I'd become so invisible that my own fiancé could betray me in the same building where we'd just promised forever. Then a car pulled up. Sleek, black, expensive. A Mercedes with tinted windows that reflected the parking lot lights like dark mirrors. The window rolled down slowly, revealing a face I knew but had always kept at a distance. Sharp features carved from granite, silver-gray eyes that seemed to see through lies, and an expression of controlled intensity that made grown men nervous. Silas Hargrave. Kaysen's father. The man who built empires and crushed competitors without ever raising his voice. He looked at me, really looked, not through me or past me, but directly into whatever remained of who I used to be. His voice, when it came, was low and absolute. "Get in." Not a question, not a request. A lifeline disguised as a command. I should have asked why. Should have questioned what he wanted, what he knew, what this meant. But I was drowning and he was offering his hand. So I opened the door and climbed inside, leaving behind the warmth of the building, the sound of celebration and every illusion I'd ever believed about love. The door closed with a soft click. The locks engaged. And as Silas pulled away from the parking lot, I realized I'd just made a choice that would change everything. I just didn't know if I was being saved or claimed. The interior of Silas's Mercedes smelled like leather and cedar, expensive, controlled. Nothing like the cologne-drenched car Kaysen drove. I pressed myself against the passenger door, trying to take up as little space as possible, trying not to think about what I'd just witnessed or what I was doing now. Silas drove in complete silence. No music, no small talk. Just the soft hum of the engine and the occasional click of the turn signal. His hands gripped the steering wheel with practiced ease, and his profile looked like it belonged on currency, all hard lines and authority. We'd been driving for maybe 5 minutes when he finally spoke. "What did you see back there?" Direct. No pretense. I swallowed hard, my throat still tight from holding back tears. Nothing. I saw nothing. "Don't lie to me, Aiden." His voice cut through my defense like a blade through silk. He didn't even glance my way, just kept his eyes on the road. "You're a terrible liar. Your hands are shaking. You haven't looked up since you got in this car. And you ran out of your own engagement party like the building was on fire." He was right. About all of it. I saw, my voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again. I saw Kaysen with Kyle. In the bathroom. They weren't just talking. Silas's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. If I hadn't been watching him closely, I would have missed it. "How long have you known?" I asked suddenly. The question surprising even myself. "Longer than you." He took a left turn onto a tree-lined avenue I didn't recognize. I had my suspicions 3 months ago when Kaysen started making weekly trips to Kyle's apartment. I had someone confirm it 6 weeks later. 6 weeks. He'd known for 6 weeks and said nothing. Let me continue planning, dreaming, believing. Anger flared hot in my chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" "'Cause it wasn't my place." Finally, he looked at me, just a brief glance, but enough to make me feel pinned. "And because I didn't think you'd believe me." Sons like Kaysen are skilled at making their fathers look paranoid and controlling. He was right again. If Silas had approached me with accusations, I probably would have defended Kaysen, called it a misunderstanding, blamed their difficult relationship. We drove past gated communities and private parks. The kind of neighborhoods where streetlights looked like vintage lanterns and every lawn was professionally maintained. Eventually, Silas pulled over in front of a small park empty at this hour, just benches and a fountain illuminated by ground lights. He turned off the engine. The sudden silence felt massive. Silas reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a manila envelope. He held it in his lap for a moment, studying it like it contained something dangerous. These are copies of the contracts for your engagement. The property agreements, financial arrangements, everything my lawyers drafted. He turned to face me fully now, and under the streetlight filtering through the windshield, his eyes looked almost silver. They're worthless now. All of them. He opened the envelope, pulled out a single sheet of paper blank except for one sentence written in dark ink across the center. He handed it to me. I held it up to catch the light and read, "You deserve better than my son." Something inside me broke open, not shattered like before, but cracked, letting all the pain I'd been holding flood out at once. Tears came fast and silent, streaming down my face while I stared at those 7 words. No one had ever said that to me. No one had ever suggested I deserved more than what I was settling for. I couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't know what I was trying to say. Didn't ask for this. Didn't want pity. Didn't think anyone would notice. I know you didn't. Silas's voice softened slightly, losing its sharp edge. But I'm telling you anyway. He took the paper back, folded it carefully, and returned it to the envelope. Then he started the car again. "Where are we going?" I managed to ask through my tears. "Somewhere you can breathe." He pulled back onto the road. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight? Family nearby? Friend?" I shook my head. I lived with Kaysen. Everything I own is in his apartment. My lease ended last month when I moved in with him. The reality of my situation was just starting to sink in. I had nowhere to go. No backup plan because I'd been so certain we were forever. "Then you'll stay with me tonight." I jerked my head toward him. "What? No. I can't." "You can. And you will." His tone left no room for argument. "I have guest rooms. Multiple. You'll have privacy, security, and time to figure out your next move without Kaysen harassing you or your family asking questions you're not ready to answer." It made sense logically, but emotionally, staying with my ex-fiancé's father felt like crossing some invisible line I couldn't uncross. "Why are you doing this?" The question came out smaller than I intended. Silas was quiet for a long moment, navigating through streets that grew progressively more exclusive. Finally he answered, "Because my son is a coward and a liar. Because you walked into my family with kindness and respect and we repaid you with betrayal." He paused. "And because someone needs to make sure you're not collateral damage in Kaysen's mess." We arrived at his estate. An estate was the only word for it. The gates opened automatically, revealing a long driveway lined with precisely trimmed hedges. The house itself was modern architecture meeting classic elegance. Clean lines, massive windows, warm light spilling from inside. Silas parked in the circular driveway and turned off the engine. He sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, before speaking again. "Inside you'll find everything you need. Tomorrow we'll deal with logistics. Getting your belongings, handling the legal dissolution of the engagement, managing any public fallout. Tonight, you rest." He got out of the car. I followed on trembling legs. The front door opened before we reached it. Apparently sensors or staff, I couldn't tell which. Inside was exactly what I expected. Immaculate, expensive, carefully curated. Every surface gleamed. Every piece of furniture looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Silas led me up a curved staircase to the 2nd floor, down a hallway lined with abstract art, and stopped at a door near the end. "This room is yours." He opened the door, revealing a bedroom larger than my childhood home's entire 1st floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the lit gardens. The bed was king-sized with pristine white linens. Everything was perfect. Everything was terrifying. "Thank you," I whispered, because what else could I say? Silas nodded once, started to leave, then stopped in the doorway. He turned back, his expression unreadable. "Aiden, what happened tonight wasn't your fault. Remember that." Then he was gone, footsteps fading down the hallway, leaving me alone in a stranger's home, wearing an engagement ring that symbolized nothing, wondering how my life had detoured so completely. I walked to the window and stared out at the gardens. Somewhere out there, my engagement party was probably still happening. People were probably still drinking, dancing, celebrating a love that never existed. And here I stood in the home of the man whose son destroyed me, feeling safer than I had in months. Nothing about that made sense. But tonight, sense was overrated. Tonight, I just needed to survive. Morning came too fast and too bright. Sunlight poured through the massive windows, turning everything in the guest room golden. For exactly 4 seconds, I forgot where I was. Forgot what happened, then memory crashed back like a wave, and I was drowning all over again. Kaysen, Kyle, the bathroom, the betrayal. I sat up slowly, my body aching like I'd been in a physical fight instead of an emotional one. The bed was too comfortable, the sheets too expensive, and I didn't belong here. But I also had nowhere else to go. After washing my face in the attached bathroom, which was nicer than any hotel I'd ever stayed in, I forced myself downstairs. The house felt different in daylight, less intimidating but somehow more real. This wasn't a dream or a rescue fantasy. This was actually happening. I found Silas in the kitchen. He wore different clothes than last night. Dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His hair was slightly damp like he'd recently showered. And he was doing something I never expected: cooking. Silas Hargraves, CEO of multiple corporations, standing at a stove flipping eggs in a pan. He glanced up when I entered, his expression neutral. Coffee's ready. Mugs are in the cabinet above the machine. You cook? The question slipped out before I could stop it. When necessary. He plated the eggs with practiced efficiency. Sit. We need to talk. And you need to eat. You didn't have dinner last night. He was right. I hadn't eaten anything since lunch yesterday. Too nervous about the engagement party. My stomach felt hollow. I sat at the kitchen island, a massive marble slab that probably weighed more than my car, and accepted the plate he slid across to me. Scrambled eggs, perfectly cooked, toast with butter, fresh fruit on the side. It looked like something from a restaurant. Silas poured 2 cups of coffee, added cream to one without asking if I wanted it, and set it in front of me. Somehow, he'd made it exactly how I liked it, which meant he'd been paying attention. When? At family dinners I'd attended, during the handful of conversations we'd had. How are you feeling? He asked, leaning against the counter opposite me with his own coffee. Numb. Angry. Confused. I picked up my fork but didn't eat yet. Like my entire life was a script someone else wrote, and I just found out I'm not even the main character. He nodded slowly. That's accurate. His bluntness should have hurt, but instead it felt refreshing. No platitudes, no false comfort, just honesty. What happens now? I asked. Now you decide what you want. Silas set down his coffee. I can have my lawyers draw up papers to officially terminate the engagement. They can also help you retrieve your belongings from Kaysen's apartment without you having to face him. If you need a place to stay while you figure things out, this house has 7 bedrooms. Choose whichever one you want. 7 bedrooms. For one man. The wealth disparity hit me suddenly. Silas lived in a mansion alone while I'd been cramming my life into Kaysen's 2-bedroom apartment. Always feeling like I was taking up too much space. That's too generous, I said quietly. It's practical. He picked up his mug again. Kaysen will try to control the narrative. He'll paint you as unstable or vindictive. Having you here under my protection makes that difficult. It also sends a clear message to my social circles about where I stand regarding his behavior. There it was, the business angle. This wasn't just kindness, it was strategy. Somehow that made it easier to accept. There's something else. Silas walked to the kitchen table where a leather folder sat waiting. He brought it back, set it on the counter between us, and opened it. Inside were documents. Lots of them. These are dissolution papers for the engagement, as I mentioned. But there's also something else. He pulled out a specific document and turned it so I could read it. A contract proposal. I scanned the text, my brain struggling to process the legal language. Then certain phrases jumped out. Exclusive partnership, mutual benefit, legal union. I looked up sharply. This is a marriage contract. Yes. Silas's expression remained perfectly calm, like he'd just suggested we order takeout instead of proposing we get married. You're insane. I pushed the document away. This is insane. Is it? He tilted his head slightly. Think about it strategically, Aiden. You need security, housing, financial stability, and protection from whatever vendetta Kaysen might pursue. I need to repair the damage my son caused to both your life and my family's reputation. A marriage arrangement accomplishes both goals. Marriage isn't a business transaction. Historically, it almost always has been. He pulled the document back toward himself, studying it clinically. Love marriages are relatively modern. For centuries, marriage was about alliances, stability, mutual advantage. This would be no different. My head was spinning. Yesterday I was engaged to his son. Today he was proposing we get married. The absurdity felt like something from a fever dream. What would you get out of this? I demanded. Really? Beyond reputation management. Silas was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I didn't expect. Peace of mind. What? He set the document down and looked at me directly, that same intense gaze from last night that felt like being x-rayed. I'm 52 years old, Aiden. I've built 3 companies from nothing, accumulated more money than I could spend in 5 lifetimes, and surrounded myself with people who either fear me or want something from me. Do you know what I don't have? Someone who sees me as human rather than useful. The vulnerability in that admission hit me harder than any sales pitch could have. You think I see you as human? I asked skeptically. I barely know you. Exactly. You don't have preconceptions about what I should be or what you can get from me. You're not impressed by wealth because you've never chased it. You're not intimidated by power because you've never wanted it. He paused. And right now, you're too hurt to pretend to be anything you're not. That's refreshingly honest. I stared at him, trying to find the manipulation, the angle, the trap. But all I saw was exhaustion behind his controlled exterior. Like maybe Silas Hargrave was as tired of playing roles as I was. This is crazy, I said again, but with less conviction. Yes. He almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. But consider it anyway. No pressure, no timeline. The offer stands whether you accept it today or 6 months from now or never. In the meantime, you have a place to stay, resources at your disposal, and time to heal. The doorbell rang suddenly, shattering the moment. Silas's expression shifted immediately, back to that cold, controlled mask. He walked to the front door, checked the security screen, and his jaw tightened. It's Kaysen. My heart seized. I wasn't ready. Couldn't face him. Not yet. Silas looked back at me, and something in his eyes looked almost protective. Do you want me to handle this, or do you want to face him yourself? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. This wasn't just about the door. This was about whether I was ready to stop being the person things happened to and become the person who made choices. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and said the words that would change everything. Open the door. I'll handle it. Silas nodded once, respect in that small gesture, and opened the door to let the storm in. I stood in the doorway, watching Kaysen's face cycle through emotions. Shock, anger, something that might have been embarrassment, but looked more like inconvenience. Behind him, Kyle appeared with that same infuriating swagger he'd worn in the bathroom last night. Like he owned every room he entered. Dad, what is this? Kaysen's voice cracked slightly. He stepped inside without invitation, his eyes darting between Silas and me. Why is he here? This is my home, Kaysen. I don't need to justify my guest list to you. Silas moved beside me, not touching but close enough that I felt his presence like a shield. The heat from his body cut through the morning chill still clinging to my skin. Kyle folded his arms, leaning against the doorframe with that insufferable smirk. This is pathetic. Aiden, did you run crying to his father? Planning to sue us or something? Something snapped inside me. Maybe it was Silas standing there solid and unwavering. Maybe it was 24 hours of being treated like I was disposable. Whatever it was, it burned through my fear and left only rage. Shut up, Kyle. The words came out steady, cold. I barely recognized my own voice. You don't get to talk to me anymore. Neither of you do. Kaysen's eyes widened. In 3 years together, I'd never spoken to him like that. I'd always been agreeable, accommodating, the one who smoothed over conflicts and apologized first. Aiden. Kaysen started, but Silas cut him off. My son doesn't deserve to speak your name. Silas's voice was arctic, each word precisely carved. He certainly doesn't deserve your attention. You both need to leave. Now. You can't be serious. Kaysen turned to his father, desperation bleeding into his tone. He's nobody, Dad. Just some guy I dated. You can have anyone, why would you humiliate yourself like this? The word nobody hit me like a physical blow. But before I could react, Silas stepped forward. His movement was controlled, predatory almost, and Kaysen actually took a step back. Humiliate myself? Silas's laugh was sharp and joyless. You cheated on your fiancé during your own engagement party. You destroyed someone who gave you 3 years of loyalty. And you have the audacity to lecture me about humiliation? Kyle pushed off the doorframe, his expression hardening. Oh please. Like you care about Aiden. This is about control, isn't it? Punishing Kaysen by taking his toy. I'm not a toy. My voice was quiet, but it carried weight. Both of them turned to look at me. I was never Kaysen's to begin with. People aren't possessions you pass around. Finally grew a spine? Kyle's sneer was ugly. Took you long enough. Enjoy it while you can, though. Silas will get bored. He always does. Ask his ex-wives. Silas moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment he was beside me. The next he was inches from Kyle's face, his hand gripping the doorframe beside Kyle's head hard enough that I heard the wood creak. My personal history is none of your concern, Silas said, voice deadly soft. But let me make something clear to both of you. Aiden is under my protection now. If either of you contact him, harass him, or attempt to damage his reputation, I will destroy you both, financially, socially, professionally. Do you understand? Kyle's confidence cracked. Kaysen went pale. You wouldn't, Kaysen began. Test me. Silas didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. The threat was absolute. I've dismantled companies for less. What do you think I'd do to my own disappointment of a son? The silence that followed was suffocating. Kaysen looked like he might cry. Kyle looked murderous, but said nothing. Get out, Silas repeated. Don't come back. Kaysen opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and walked out. Kyle lingered, shooting me one last look. Something between pity and contempt. This won't end well for you, he said quietly. Just to me. Men like Silas don't save people. They collect them. Then he was gone. The door closing with a soft click that felt louder than any slam. I stood there shaking. Adrenaline flooded my system, making my hands tremble and my breath come short. Silas turned to me, and for the first time I saw something other than control in his expression. Concern. Are you all right? He asked. No. The honesty surprised me. I'm terrified. Of them, of this situation, of you. Everything feels like it's spinning out of control and I don't know how to stop it. Silas studied me for a long moment. Then unexpectedly, he walked toward the living room and sat on the leather sofa, gesturing to the chair across from him. Sit. We need to talk honestly. I sat, perched on the edge of the chair like I might need to run. You're right to be scared, Silas said, surprising me again. This situation is complicated. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But I want you to understand something. You're not trapped here. You're not obligated to accept anything I've offered. Then why offer it at all? The question burst out of me. Why defend me like that? Why threaten your own son? Silas leaned back, his expression thoughtful. Do you know what I do, Aiden? Beyond the general businessman answer. I shook my head. I fix problems. Companies bring me in when they're failing. When bad leadership has poisoned everything. I assess the damage, remove the toxic elements, and rebuild from what's salvageable. He paused. Kaysen is a toxic element. He always has been. And you're salvageable. More than that, you're worth salvaging. I'm not a company, I whispered. No, you're a person who's been systematically devalued until you believed you weren't worth defending. Silas's gray eyes locked onto mine. But you are. And if you'll let me, I'd like to help you remember that. My throat tightened. What do you want from me in return? Honestly, I don't know yet. He ran a hand through his hair, the first unguarded gesture I'd seen from him. Maybe just proof that not everyone in my life is a disappointment. Maybe a chance to do something right for once. Or maybe, he trailed off, and in that silence I heard all the things he didn't say. Loneliness. Regret. The weight of being Silas Hargrave. Untouchable and alone. Maybe what? I prompted softly. Maybe I'm tired of being alone in a house full of empty rooms. His smile was sad, brief. But that's my problem, not yours. You need time to heal, to figure out who you are outside of Kaysen's shadow. I can give you that time, that space, no expectations, no demands, and the marriage proposal? Still on the table if you want it, but there's no timeline, Aiden. Take a week, a month, a year, or say no and I'll help you rebuild your life independently. Either way, I meant what I said, you're under my protection now. I looked at this man, this powerful, complicated, lonely man, and realized I was standing at a crossroads. One path led back to the person I'd been: small, accommodating, invisible. The other led somewhere unknown, possibly dangerous, but undeniably different. Can I ask you something? Anything, Silas said. Do you always rescue your son's ex-boyfriends, or am I special? For the first time, Silas actually laughed. It transformed his face, made him look years younger, almost approachable. You're definitely special, he said, and probably insane for not running away screaming. Maybe I am, I admitted, but I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being small. If you're offering me a chance to be someone different, I think I want to take it. Something shifted in Silas's expression. Hope, maybe, or recognition. Then welcome to your new life, Aiden. Fair warning, it's going to be messy. Good, I said, surprising myself. I'm done with perfect. 3 days passed in a strange sort of limbo. Silas went to work each morning, returned each evening, and we orbited each other carefully. Two people learning a dance neither of us knew the steps to. He didn't push, didn't demand answers about the marriage proposal, just existed beside me, steady and solid. On the 4th evening, he found me in the library. I'd discovered it on day 2, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs by the window, the kind of room that felt like it belonged in another century. I was curled up with a book I wasn't really reading when he appeared in the doorway. Dinner? He asked simply. Sure. Should I help? Already done. I thought we could eat outside tonight. The weather's decent. He led me to a terrace I hadn't known existed. Wisteria climbing the pergola, string lights creating constellations overhead, and a table set for 2 that looked intimate without trying too hard. You did this? I asked, genuinely surprised. Don't look so shocked, I'm capable of basic tasks. There was amusement in his voice. Sit. The food's getting cold. He'd made pasta. Nothing fancy, just carbonara with a side salad. But it was good, surprisingly good. And I found myself relaxing despite my nerves. I've been thinking about your offer, I said after we'd eaten in comfortable silence for a while. The marriage thing. Silas set down his fork, giving me his full attention. And I still don't understand why. You keep saying I'm worth it, that I deserve better, but those are just words. Why do you actually want this? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. Then he stood, walked to the terrace railing, and stared out at the city lights below. My first marriage ended because I was 25 and stupid. My second ended because I prioritized work over everything else. My third, he paused. My third ended because we both realized we were using each other as placeholders. Comfortable, convenient, utterly hollow. He turned to face me, and in the soft light he looked vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. I'm 52 years old, Aiden. I've built everything I set out to build. Made more money than 3 generations could spend. Earned respect, fear, influence. And every night I come home to silence. His voice dropped. Do you know what that's like? To have everything and feel empty? Yes, I whispered. I felt that way with Kaysen. Like I had the relationship everyone expected me to want, but inside I was disappearing. Exactly. Silas moved closer, not touching but near enough that I could see the silver threaded through his hair, the fine lines around his eyes. When I saw you that first time when Kaysen brought you home, you were the first person in decades who looked at me and saw a person instead of a portfolio. You asked me about my day, not my deals or my profits. My day, like it mattered. I remembered that dinner. I'd been so nervous, wanting to make a good impression on Kaysen's intimidating father. I'd asked him questions because it seemed polite, because he'd seemed tired, and I'd wanted to be kind. That was 2 years ago, I said slowly. You remember that? I remember everything about that night. His honesty was staggering. I remember thinking Kaysen didn't deserve you, that you were too good, too genuine. And I was right. Silas, Let me finish. He held up a hand. I'm not in love with you, Aiden. I won't lie and say I am. But I respect you. I admire your kindness, your resilience, and I think, given time, I could fall in love with you, which is more than I've felt about anyone in 20 years. My heart hammered against my ribs. What if I can't love you back? What if this is a mistake? Then we'll have made it together, which is better than making mistakes alone. He smiled, self-deprecating. I know how this sounds. Crazy. Inappropriate. A cliché waiting to happen. But I'm asking anyway, give this a chance. Give us a chance. 6 months. If at the end you want out, I'll help you leave. Set you up with everything you need to start over. No strings. And if I stay, then we figure out what this becomes. Together. The word together hung between us, heavy with possibility. I thought about my empty apartment, my shallow friendships, the years I'd spent making myself smaller to fit into Kaysen's life. What did I have to lose by choosing something different? 6 months, I heard myself say. But I want rules, boundaries. Name them. No public displays beyond what's necessary to maintain appearances. No pressure for physical intimacy until I'm ready. And honesty, complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Silas nodded slowly. Agreed. And I'll add one more rule. You're allowed to change your mind. Anytime, for any reason. This isn't a prison sentence, okay? The word felt huge, world-changing. Okay, let's try this. Something flickered across Silas's face, relief, maybe, or hope. He extended his hand, formal and serious. Partner. I took his hand. His palm was warm, calloused despite his wealth. Partners. He held my hand a moment longer than necessary, then lifted it and pressed his lips to my knuckles. Old-fashioned, respectful, nothing like the grabbing, presumptuous touches I'd gotten from Kaysen. Thank you, he said quietly, for trusting me with this. We stood there on the terrace, the city sprawling below us, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not love, not yet, but possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, I was choosing myself for the first time in years. Silas, I said as we gathered dishes to go inside. Yes, I'm still terrified. He smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. Good. That means you're paying attention. The day you stop being scared is the day you should worry. Later that night, alone in my room, I stared at the ceiling and tried to process what I'd just agreed to. Marriage to my ex-fiancé's father. It was insane. It was reckless. It was possibly the worst decision I'd ever made. But it was mine. My choice. My risk. And that made all the difference. Outside my door, I heard Silas pass by on his way to his own room. His footsteps paused briefly, then continued. That small hesitation told me everything. He was just as uncertain, just as scared, just as hopeful. We were two broken people trying to build something whole. Maybe it would work. Maybe it would fall apart. But at least we'd be falling together. And somehow that was enough. The press release went out at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was drinking coffee in the kitchen when my phone exploded with notifications, texts, calls, social media alerts. I stared at the screen, watching my old life burn down in real time. Billionaire CEO Silas Hargrave announces engagement to Aiden Foster. Sources confirmed Foster was previously engaged to Hargrave's son Kaysen, who allegedly terminated their relationship days before. I couldn't read the rest. My hands were shaking too badly. Silas appeared in the doorway, already dressed for work in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. He took one look at my face and crossed the room, gently removing the phone from my grip. Breathe, he instructed. The first day is always the worst. Tomorrow there'll be some new scandal and everyone will forget about us. They're calling me a gold digger, a homewrecker. They're saying I seduced you for revenge. Let them say it. His voice was calm, grounding. The people whose opinions matter know the truth. Everyone else is just noise. How do you do that? Stay so calm when people are tearing you apart? Silas set my phone face down on the counter. Years of practice. And remembering that their words don't change reality. I know who I am. Soon you'll remember who you are too, and their opinions won't matter. 2 hours later, I was sitting in the back of Silas's car, being driven to his office building. He'd asked me to come, said it was important. I'd assumed he meant for a private meeting. I was wrong. The conference room was full, executives, board members, people in expensive suits who all turned to stare when we entered. My stomach dropped. Everyone, Silas said, his hand settling on my lower back, steadying, not possessive. This is Aiden Foster, my fiancé. He'll be accompanying me to company events and should be treated with the same respect you'd show me. Any question? Silence. Then a woman in the front row stood and extended her hand. Welcome, Aiden. I'm Margaret Chen, VP of Operations. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. One by one, others followed. Not everyone was warm. I caught skeptical looks, heard whispered conversations, but no one was openly hostile. Silas had made his position clear, and in his world that was law. Afterward, in his private office, I collapsed into a chair. That was terrifying. You did well. Silas loosened his tie, looking almost tired. Better than I expected, honestly. What happens now? Now we live our lives. We attend events, have dinner, get to know each other. We let people speculate while we figure out what we're actually building. He paused. There's a charity gala this weekend. Black tie. We should make our first public appearance. My stomach flipped. That's fast. We can wait if you're not ready. But Aiden, the sooner we face the public together, the sooner this becomes old news. He was right, but that didn't make it less scary. Okay. The gala. But you have to promise not to leave me alone with strangers. I promise. His smile was gentle. We're in this together, remember? The week passed in a blur of preparation. Silas took me to get fitted for a tuxedo. Not rented, custom-made, with fabric so fine it felt like water. He introduced me to his assistant, his driver, the key people in his life. Slowly, carefully, he was weaving me into his world. The night of the gala, I stood in front of the mirror in my new tux and barely recognized myself. I looked sophisticated, confident, like someone who belonged at Silas's side. He appeared behind me in the reflection, stunning in black tie. Ready? No, I admitted. But let's do it anyway. The venue was spectacular. A historic hotel ballroom dripping with chandeliers and old money. Cameras flashed as we arrived. Reporters shouting questions we both ignored. Silas kept his hand on my back, guiding me through the chaos with practiced ease. Inside, we were immediately surrounded. Business associates, social climbers, genuinely curious people. Everyone wanted to meet the man who'd captured Silas Hargrave's attention. I smiled until my face hurt, shook hands until my palm ached, and answered the same polite questions over and over. Then I saw them. Kaysen and Kyle across the room staring at us with identical expressions of disbelief. Silas felt me tense. Ignore them, he murmured. They're irrelevant. But they weren't. Not yet. Because Kaysen was walking toward us. Kyle trailing behind, both looking like they were headed for a confrontation. Aiden, Kaysen said loudly enough that nearby conversations paused. Can we talk? Privately? No, I said simply. Please. 5 minutes. I need to explain. There's nothing to explain. My voice was steady, clear. You made your choice. I've made mine. We're done. You're making a mistake, Kyle cut in, his smile sharp. This isn't real, Aiden. You're just a phase. A way for him to punish Kaysen. You'll see. Before I could respond, Silas moved. Not aggressively, he simply stepped between us, his presence alone enough to shift the dynamic. Gentlemen, he said coldly, you're causing a scene. Leave. This is insane, Dad. You can't actually be serious about. I've never been more serious about anything. Silas's voice carried authority that made even strangers within earshot go quiet. And the only mistake here is assuming I need your approval. Now remove yourselves before I have security escort you out. Kaysen's face flushed with humiliation. Kyle grabbed his arm, pulling him away before the situation escalated further. As they retreated, I heard scattered murmurs around us. Some supportive, some scandalized. Silas turned to me, his expression softening. Are you all right? Actually, I said, surprised by my own honesty. Yes. That felt good. Standing up to them. Good. He offered his arm. Now come on. Let's dance and really give them something to talk about. On the dance floor, with Silas's hand on my waist and classical music swelling around us, I felt something shift. This wasn't pretend anymore. We weren't acting for cameras or playing roles. This was real, messy, and complicated, and absolutely real. Thank you, I said quietly. For all of this, don't thank me yet. His eyes held something I couldn't quite name. We're just beginning. 3 weeks later, we stood in a courthouse. No fanfare, no spectacle, just two witnesses and a judge. When the judge asked if I took Silas as my husband, I said yes without hesitation. When Silas repeated his vows, his voice was steady and sure, and when he kissed me soft and careful and full of promise, I finally understood. This wasn't about revenge or convenience or fixing broken things. This was about two people choosing each other despite everything. Choosing possibility over fear. Choosing to build something new from ruins. Walking out of that courthouse as Aidan Hargrave, I felt lighter than I had in years. The future was uncertain, maybe even dangerous, but it was ours, and that made all the difference.